You know, I've been wanting to make a series of videos for a while, and I wasn't quite sure what I would be covering outside of it being painting. But one thing I do know, over the last few years, I spent a lot of time teaching, guiding students in their painting practice, their art practice in general, and it's something I know I can contribute to and I can motivate people with. So what I thought would be an interesting idea would be to think about connecting and connections and how you might form a connection with your practice. I've sort of been talking to a few old friends recently. They've not had the opportunity really to continue to paint because of circumstances. So what I thought I would talk about today would be, how we might kickstart that, and how we might either start fresh. Maybe you're coming to painting fresh, you've got no clue, where do you start? Or if you've been out the loop for a while, how can you get back into it? And I'll talk a little bit about me and how I make connections in my work, and then how you might sort of tackle that within your own practice. I've had a series of operations the last few years to my throat, which threw up a few complications, but also provided me with an opportunity to think about the experience and to respond to it. So I've always been quite a tactile painter. I enjoy thick paint, lots of impasto, really interested in the rheology of paint and how the material can shift and shape and what kind of marks you can make with it depending on how you manipulate it. And I was really curious about when I was put under general anaesthetic. There was just a sense of nothingness. It was complete oblivion, and I found that quite unsettling. And so it's kind of I don't really know how to describe it outside of it's encouraged me to be even more enthusiastic about the sensation of touch and sight and sound and smell than I was before. So my use of paint has probably quadrupled since I've had these operations, because I was just struck by the nothingness of I can't even call it an experience, because there was just a gap, and that was really disturbing. So my paintings now are so full on in the physical reality of what the paint can do, and the implications of that it's become this, without that experience, I don't think I probably would have lent so much into the direction I have been. But what I can say is that, the way I work, certainly it's always been there bubbling, it's always been simmering, this sense of physicality, this sense of, it was never about colour. my practice was never about colour. It was always about mark and embracing that sensation and that feeling of what a sense of really robust painterly mark making can do. And in a funny way, I've really started to embrace colour now, unexpectedly. So you might, one of the things you should always consider, certainly one of the things that's always at the front of my mind, is how you can utilise your life experience. And often, I fell in love with oil paint as soon as I got my hands on it, and that was, that's 20 years ago. I couldn't get enough of the stuff, and I still can't, and that's one of the reasons why I started to make my own paint. I literally could not get enough of the stuff. And that's, understanding the technical properties of the paint, what a certain pigment can do, what a material can do, what your surface can do. That excites me so much that one of the long-term views I have on my work is that I'm quite interested in seeing how the layering of paint and how the thickness of paint and how the saturation of the pigment with oil or not will shift the image or the picture plane. Because it's not, a painting is not just this static thing. You don't finish it and off you go. It's an entity and it lives and breathes. If you paint on canvas, and let's say you use a traditional support, so you've got a rabbit skin glue size, you've got maybe you've got a ground on there, and you've worked in a traditional manner. That thing literally breathes, and it'll change with the moisture content, and the image or the picture will start to deteriorate based on the conditions it's in. And so that really interests me. So one of the things I really lean into is how I can leverage that. Because then you have this thing that just continues on its own, takes on a life of its own. So outside of the things that are apparent at the minute with my work, if I've got natural light coming through the window, it'll look a particular way. If I've got artificial light in, or the seasons change and the way the light hits the surface, it will do different things to the painting that I've made, and that really excites me. So when it comes to your practice or your beginnings of trying to get back into things, if you've had a period of time off, the big thing I'd say to you is try to find a consistent space in which to work. And it doesn't have to be a big space, it just has to be a space. It might be the corner of a room, it might be a man's kitchen table, somewhere that you can reliably go so that you can work uninterrupted for a period of time. It doesn't have to be all afternoon, it might just be 15 minutes, just to give you some time to work on the ideas that have been mulling and swirling around in your head. And that might be something as simple as, I can't even remember what it feels like to hold a paintbrush. And I've got all these paintbrushes here, and I don't know how to use them or which one to use. And it might be as simple as you picking up the hog hair brush and a synthetic brush and testing those out. It can be that simple, just to give you the confidence to answer a question that you had. You can't think your way out of those things. You need to put in practice certain things, certain questions you have. Right, and I would always frame whatever you are doing with your painting or your practice as a series of questions. And in that way, even if what you're doing doesn't come out as you expected it and you think it's total crap, which 90% of the time it may very well be. But if you've got those questions and you find it might not be a definitive answer, but it might confirm your suspicions of where things are going, in that sense, you can't fail. You can't make mistakes. It might be crap what you've made, but it'll solve a problem, a question that you have about your practice. And that's really important, because then you're setting yourself a goal. And when you set yourself a goal, you can focus on it and move on. Know what you want to do, even if you don't know how to do it, and then set about questioning, how can I do this? Okay. One of my obsessions, it is lead white. There's so much you can do with traditional lead white that you can't do with modern substitutes or modern replacements, shall we say, like titanium white. I've been obsessed about this, so much so that I've made a synthetic version that it's not perfect because it's not lead, but it certainly isn't toxic, and it does most of the things I would want it to do. And in some cases, if you've seen some of my latest paintings, it will let me do things in a really exaggerated way. So the ropiness and the loopiness in my paintings lately, that's one of the things that really excites me about where my practice is going. So you should be excited by your practice as well. Doesn't mean it's always going to be smooth sailing, far from it, but you should be excited by your practice. Painting is one of those things where you create an entity. This painting has a life of its own. Really ask yourself what you want from painting, but don't think about it too hard. When I say ask yourself, I mean do, make. Start playing around with things to see where it gets you, because then you'll get your answers. You'll get your answers through direct feedback. So I think I'm going to leave it there.